Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Good Boxing Podcast with your host, Josh Sias. And I wanted to touch on a quick topic. Everyone knows the mega fight between Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury is set to take place on July 24th. I'm personally very, very excited for this fight, and a lot of people feel like the rematch doesn't need to take place, but I'm actually of the school that it does need to take place. I don't think a lot of people remember that Deontay Wilder gave Tyson Fury a shot when no one would. Tyson Fury had essentially vanished off the face of the earth, and really wasn't in the best of mental states. Everyone remembers his comeback. He had the warm-up fights, and then he fought Deontay Wilder. Now, Tyson Fury, no one wanted to give this guy a shot. They were writing him off as a clown, as someone that basically squandered away his undisputed championship. And sorry, I got a dog hair on my face. And someone that no longer deserved to be in the limelight. Everyone had moved on from the Gypsy King. It seemed like that was the case. You had Anthony Joshua, who was basically the darling of the heavyweight division. Vladimir Klitschko ended up losing to Anthony Joshua, and it seemed like the torch had been passed from Vladimir Klitschko, who was the de facto king of the division, and was passed over to Anthony Joshua. Now, Anthony Joshua had more belts, but there was another heavyweight out there that was knocking everyone out, making everyone look just ordinary, no matter how polished of a boxer. He had this eraser Thor hammer of a right hand that no one could handle. Not Berman Stavern. Not just the list went on and on. So now fast forward. Tyson Fury steps in the ring with Deontay Wilder. Everyone thought Wilder was going to kill Fury, and Fury put on a boxing lesson. Sure, he got dropped twice, and everyone remembers that last round where it seemed like he got up from the dead. I thought he lost. I was pissed off. I'm like, fuck. This guy boxing beautifully. I thought he was going to shock the world, and then he gets knocked out in the last round. I was pissed. But it ended up being a draw. There was unfinished business. Tyson Fury decides to go to Top Rank, signs that $100 million deal. And it seemed like, hey, we weren't going to get the rematch. But we did. Often in boxing, we don't get the rematch we deserve. We don't get that closure that we desire as fans. And in the heavyweight division, I think the promoters realized that the heavyweight division was stacked so much that you had to make these fights. Everyone was talking about this fight, and the rematch was going to be box office. Now, the first build-up, a lot of people didn't care about the fight. A lot of people didn't know who Tyson Fury was, to be honest with you. Outside of the hardcore fans, people kind of remember Tyson Fury, but they didn't really know who he was. But in this second fight, everyone knew who he was. That clip went viral. He got up off the floor. He went out and then took it to Deontay Wilder. And then in the second fight, Tyson Fury started making proclamations that rubbed people the wrong way. He changed trainers, got rid of Ben Davison, and he essentially proclaimed that he was going to knock Deontay Wilder out in 2 rounds. Now, even myself, I know Tyson Fury likes to talk a lot of shit, and I didn't really take it that seriously, but it ended up happening. Deontay Wilder looked like a shell of himself. He had a bad night in the office, and Tyson Fury went on to win in spectacular fashion, knocking Deontay Wilder out in spectacular fashion. And then it seemed like the wheels just seemed to fall off the wagon for Deontay Wilder. You heard all the excuses. You heard Breland this, spiked my water. You had egg weights in your hands. The list goes on and on. Now, this video isn't here to kind of recap the events and talk about those events. It's actually here to say, what if Deontay Wilder wins? What does it mean? Is it over for Tyson Fury? Is Tyson Fury going to be considered overrated? What happens if Deontay Wilder gets figured out I'm sorry, if Deontay Wilder figures out the Gypsy King? What if he regains the WBC title, regains all the glory, and knocks out the best heavyweight in the world right now in terms of boxing skills? Because he's a lineal heavyweight champion. He still hasn't lost. There are no blemishes on his record. And honestly, stylistically, I'm not going to sit here and give you a Tyson Fury adulation clip. Tyson Fury is the best in the world. He's the tallest. He can switch. He can fight lefty, has power, moves like a middleweight, a nightmare. But what if Deontay Wilder wins this fight? And that's kind of what I'm going to go into in this video. Deontay Wilder changed his camp, sat here and decided to hire Malik Scott. Yes, I know people were like, oh, how can Malik Scott do something that he himself couldn't do? And the fact of the matter is, I think people got to realize you got to stop equating your fighting ability with your training ability. I know a bunch of fighters that are shit trainers, and I know a bunch of shit trainers that are really, really good fighters. And some bullshit fighters that are fantastic trainers. And I'm just being honest with you. It's a different skill set. So that's the first thing I want to do. I commend Deontay Wilder for, one, I understand you feel what you felt. I understand that you had to make a change and you have to kind of repackage yourself into this new monster in order to beat Tyson Fury. I do agree that Mark Breland wasn't the case for his first loss. It wasn't his fault. He wasn't to blame for his L. Deontay Wilder had a bunch of deficiencies in his game, and you saw it. Tyson Fury is just a more polished boxer, and he had a little more versatility in his game. No one had ever stood up to the bully except for Luis Ortiz, but Luis Ortiz fell asleep for a second and got erased with the right hand like every other opponent that Deontay Wilder had fought. So first things first, I like the fact that he brought in someone he likes, and I like the fact that he's just trying to find good vibes and kind of get into a spot where he believes, again, that he could actually win, because the first step in winning is you have to change your mindset. I know it's some bullshit jargon, self-help, oh, rah, rah, rah. Yeah, I'm aware of that. But if Deontay Wilder feels like he is doing the same thing, I don't think he can expect to get a different outcome. And the reason why I feel like Wilder is getting a little overlooked in this matchup is Tyson Fury beat the shit out of him in that second fight. But in the first fight, I know Tyson Fury was a little rusty. Deontay Wilder hit him with some shit. He hit him with a good right hand. He hit him with a hook, and he almost knocked him out. So if you take the two fights, they've seen each other over and over. And I know in boxing history that the boxer always has the, in my opinion, the boxer most likely has the advantage in a rematch. It happened with Sergey Kovalev and Andre Ward. It's happened in other fights where when you see it a few times, you can figure it out. And if the person doesn't change, it's going to be the same thing over and over. But a lot of people don't know that in the second fight, Deontay Wilder gave Tyson Fury a black eye. And he hit him with the right hand that, my God, if Tyson Fury didn't look it off and just post just at the right time, he would have been knocked out. And I'm being honest with you, the right hand hit him and he rode it off. And I was scared. But then he proceeded to do the game plan, went forward, and you know what happened. But Deontay Wilder was looking to knock Fury out. He thought it was going to be Tyson Fury versus Deontay Wilder 1. He didn't expect Fury to come out, blitzkrieg him, and essentially knock him out. He didn't expect that. So this fight, he knows what Tyson Fury is capable of, but I don't think he's going to be as blindsided in this matchup. And the reason why I say what if he catches Tyson Fury, knocks him the fuck out? What does that do for the heavyweight landscape? I think it ruins a lot. I think if Tyson Fury gets knocked out by Deontay Wilder, one, there's going to have to be a fourth fight. So Anthony Joshua, Deontay Wilder, Anthony Joshua, Tyson Fury, all of those fights have to be put on pause until there's another rematch. Because right now you got the draw, you have Tyson Fury's domination, and then finally you have Deontay Wilder. Now, I know Tyson Fury is not going to be like Lomachenko. He's going to have that rematch clause. I know in the heart of hearts, there's a rematch clause for Tyson Fury in the event that he loses. I don't think there's one for Deontay Wilder because he's not bringing anything to the table, and he exercised his rematch clause in this fight in order for it to happen. But if it does happen, Deontay Wilder's retribution and redemption changes the complexion of boxing history for Deontay Wilder. Deontay Wilder is one of the most feared heavyweights in the world and still should be, because for the exception of Tyson Fury, who's beaten Deontay Wilder? Nobody. And I think people need to realize that this isn't an easy ass fight for Deontay Wilder or Tyson Fury. This isn't an easy fight for either gentleman. And I understand that Tyson Fury dominated that second fight, but if Tyson doesn't come in focused, if he doesn't have a good game plan, now you don't have the element of surprise anymore. Tyson Fury likes to fuck around a lot, and maybe he goes out there trying to knock Deontay Wilder out. Deontay Wilder has some power, so maybe that game plan won't work this time. Maybe Deontay Wilder learned how to fight on the back foot and realize, like, hey, I can actually move, I can box, and I could set something up where maybe Tyson Fury gets a little overzealous and gets hit with something. But the retribution and redemption that Deontay Wilder would get, the exoneration from all of the hate he's been getting, which is some of it unwarranted and some of it very warranted. I think if he baptizes Tyson Fury and knocks him out, you're changing the complexion of your entire legacy. People are going to say he had a bad night in the office, and then you could go on and live your life. Maybe you get the rematch, maybe you don't, maybe you fight again. I think they'll fight again because there's unfinished business. I mean, Marquez and Pacquiao fought how many times? So Deontay Wilder, if he wins this fight, changes not only his legacy, but the complexion of the heavyweight division's history. One, right now, I'm going to be honest with you, and I know people think I'm being hyperbolic and I'm a Tyson Fury fan, but if Tyson Fury beats Deontay Wilder again, goes on to beat Anthony Joshua, becomes undisputed champion, Tyson Fury is going to go down, in my opinion, as the best heavyweight of all time. I know people are. Ali was fantastic. Boxing history, boxing aficionados love Ali. He stood for a lot. He stood for the greatest of all time. He did a lot of great things in boxing. He was a fantastic fighter. But Ali's not beating Tyson Fury, be honest. Mike Tyson's not beating Tyson Fury. Evander Holyfield is not beating Tyson Fury. You name the heavyweight, they're not beating Tyson Fury. If Deontay Wilder beats Tyson Fury, then you start to kind of enter the doubt of his boxing skills, of his overall domination of a division, because he was once undisputed champion, retired, came back and became undisputed champion again in the same division, which was really, really difficult. Right now, the heavyweight division is pretty stacked. So if he reigns upon a division where the division is pretty strong, in my opinion, I think you're going to have to look back and say Tyson Fury might be the greatest heavyweight of all time in terms of package, boxing, legacy, two-time undisputed champion, fights everyone, not afraid of a fight. Go on to beat Anthony Joshua. We're talking a really, really big conversation. But Deontay Wilder wins. He beats Tyson Fury. He gets his redemption. stops one of the potential biggest fights in heavyweight history. Now Deontay Wilder is back in the conversation. Maybe he becomes undisputed champion, fights the winner of Usyk and Anthony Joshua. And now Deontay Wilder has a redemption story, becomes a bigger figure in boxing. And you only have one loss against one of the most difficult matchups in boxing. I think the only person that could beat Tyson Fury is, well, I'm going to say two people. Two people that beat Tyson Fury are Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder, in my opinion. Deontay Wilder has that power that you make a mistake, you pay the ultimate price. So I think this fight means so much to Deontay Wilder. If he wins, heavyweight boxing history is going to change if Tyson Fury falls. He's no longer going to be considered one of the best heavyweights of all time. And Deontay Wilder is going to pick his ass up off the floor as someone that, oh, he was always overrated and he only had power and he's only a one-trick pony. And it's going to change the power schematic of the heavyweight division. So I just wanted to kind of touch on that. Deontay Wilder wins this fight. What if he does? And it's just, I can't even think about it. That's the episode for today. Those are some of my thoughts. Let me know how you feel. Feel free to leave a like, a comment, and don't forget to subscribe. If you're on Instagram, follow us at Good Boxing Podcast. Thank you and have a great day.